I went to a sparring class the other day, and that is where it's a mirror, so I get it wrong. That is where that is from. So if you're thinking, oh shit, Money Mitch is getting beaten up, I'm not. I just go kickboxing, and I got sparked in the face a little bit too hard. So that's why that's there. I bruise easily. Anyway, moving on to this episode. So this is a real bucket list guest. It's someone that it's one of those people, along with Palador, that I made this podcast for. I wanted to sit down with these people, have the privilege of having their time for like an extended amount of time, like an hour or so. And I mean, we go long. I think this is the longest episode I've done. Like I say, bucket list guest. It's someone that I felt needs to tell their story in long form. And it's, I mean, if you're in this community, if you're in this world, then you've kind of watched them from afar and you've seen what they've been doing. Perhaps you don't know about like their earlier life before they got into the world of Echo. We obviously spend quite a bit of time in this podcast, in this interview, going over that, their life before Echo, and then how it was quite natural for these things to align. Because it's always in hindsight, you look back and you see, oh yeah, it's actually quite obvious how I'd end up here. But at the time, you're like, I don't know, like it doesn't really make sense at the time, but things have their way of just falling into place. That definitely happened with this individual. Their interests just seem to align, their personality type, and their own personal journey of their own personal evolution, finding their voice, etc., etc. Caster, moderator, player as well. Talk about coaching, that was really interesting. This person is one of the most referred to, used content on YouTube, on the internet, for how to play this game at such a high level. They have this unique perspective on the game and are able to teach it at this high level because they've watched so many games. Where other people come in and try and teach this game, it's because of personal experience, and they're learning the individual aspects of how to play the game, how you win your 50-50s, how you improve your throw, how you learn to brawl, etc., etc. This person looks at it from a higher level, taking inspiration from other sports like American football and hockey, and breaking the game down from as a 4v4 strategy in a 3D environment. Really interesting. So, yeah. Well, one other thing I want to say before we get into this is that I'm like towards the end of it, I find it quite funny, and like I feel weird about finding it funny, but it is just funny. This person has quite a like nihilistic view on like everything, on technology, where we're at the moment with VR technology and then AI. I mean, 2023 is the year for AI. It's absolutely crazy, the stuff that's coming out. And yeah, it's just a very mature, it's an insight into someone, a very mature point of their journey with technology. I've worded that in such a long way, but it's good. This is one of my favorite podcasts to interview, one of my favorite people in Echo. Absolutely incredible, and I'm really glad I got to make this happen. So, reach for my headset. This is SirDimwi. Let's get into it. SirDimwi.
Cool.
How are you doing?
You know, marching forward, hanging on, doing all right. Otherwise, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. So, you told me when we were arranging this interview, you haven't been in the arena since the shutdown announcement. Is that correct?
Yeah, I haven't been in VR actually since that announcement.
In VR at all?
At all, yeah.
At all?
Yeah.
So where are you like right now? So do you work in VR at all?
Not currently. That's the goal, obviously,
Right.
but not currently, no. And right now, this moment, I am at my girlfriend's house. I was at my house. I came over here because she's taking today off, so came over here earlier than I usually would. And yeah, sat down to do this. I'm in her office, and her office room in the house. And yeah.
What do you do for work at the moment?
I am a store manager at a retail place.
Okay. But the dream is for VR in some way, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's obviously the dream. We'll see what happens over the next few months. But
Okay,
yeah, for now, that's I'm kind of just trying to make sure there's a solid foundation under my feet, and that no more big rocks of the house.
fair play. So where did you grow up? Where are you from?
I was born in Pittsburgh. I always had family in Pittsburgh, but I was raised in Tallahassee, Florida, which is northern Florida in the Panhandle. I lived there primarily. I lived there until I turned 21, and the week I turned 21, I moved back to Pittsburgh, and I've been in Pittsburgh ever since. That
And
was 15 years ago. Yeah.
15 years ago. And
Yeah.
your parents are, you said North Florida?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
my parents met in Pittsburgh. They got married
Yeah.
in Pittsburgh. They had me in Pittsburgh, then we moved around a bit. And then while we were in Florida, they separated. My dad moved back to Pittsburgh, and my mother stayed in Florida, and that's where they are now. So my father's here in Pittsburgh, locally in the same area I'm in,
Mm.
similar areas, not right nearby, but not too far. And my mother lives down in Florida. We have a very active phone relationship.
Cool. What did you, so you're, how old are you now? If you don't mind me
36.
asking. 36.
I don't mind.
What did you do out of school? Or did you go to university?
I did not. Well, I did attempt at university at one point in my mid 20s, but no. My goal out of high school, well, I was going to take a year off, but we all know what that actually means. And I wanted to be a rock star. I was in bands. I played guitar. I played various instruments. I was in various bands over about a 10-year span. That. My thought was you have to be all in. It might
Mm.
not happen, but you have to be all in. And
Mm.
yeah, while I was doing that, I was retail management then as well. It was restaurant management, as like the fallback, but it wasn't a fallback. It was just to make money while I was doing that. Eventually, that I kind of lost whatever motivator to be a rock star or whatever,
Mm.
because it's after a certain point you realize it is a pipe dream and you do need to figure something out. And then that's when I found a few, in that similar time frame, I discovered Echo Arena and VR and VR esports and all that, and that's how I kind of wedged my way into there to try to start making that the reality I wanted.
So going back to, let's say going back to like 18, 19. So you were pretty set on this career, this pipe dream of like rock star life. What was the music back then? Was this like metal, or was it
Yeah,
more
it
like
was like
folky? Or
radio metal. So it was there was some heavy bits. We had some. I was a big riff guy. I like playing just hard, groovy
yeah,
riffs. Some of that southern metal, so that groove southern metal, like Pantera influence, but also more radio stuff like Breaking Benjamin. Not proud of that, but that's just that's how it was.
that's cool. I love
And
Breaking Benjamin.
yeah. So it wasn't bad, but it was meant to be radio friendly, and we had some potential there, but
Mm.
our I would say our business wisdom was lacking.
What were so? Could you paint the picture of what your lifestyle was like at that point? So you had a band. I'm assuming there's four
It's
of you.
Yeah, I was a starving musician basically. Was making just enough money to do what I needed to do, and yeah, there was how many of us? Five, I think total: a drummer, bass player, two guitar players, and a singer.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I practiced twice a week. We never went on tour, but we definitely hit places around the region.
Yeah.
We started developing a fan base, but like I said, our business wisdom was fairly lacking. So the efficiency of our efforts wasn't really there.
Did you have someone either in the band or like with the band that did step up in that way in terms of like business, trying to get those gigs, trying to like grow and manage the business side of it?
Whoops. Yes and no. It was kind of committee thing, and back then I still I was good at understanding things, but I was really bad at application. And
Mm.
so I never really took that. If the initiative you see me, running with around Echo and VRML did not exist back then. I was very much just along for the ride. And even though I had
Mm.
ideas, like I said, I didn't really have that kind of aggressive push that I tend to have these days. So yeah, no one really. I guess there was, like I said, there was kind of a committee decisions, but the decisions were maybe not the most informed. Again, as far as the business goes, the music was great in my opinion, but yeah, it was just that how to actually grow a fan base, how to budget and run your finances, how to actually properly sell merch, and do all that, like build your company, which is what you're basically doing. It's just as a band. Yeah, we didn't have that wisdom back then, and that's the kind of thing, like, if I knew then what I know now, but also reality is reality. So
Were you so was it a love for the music and performing on stage, or was it like a rebellion of being forced down a certain career path, or a bit of both?
so
What
I
was the
was never
motivation?
really I was never really forced on it because I was a very exceptionally stubborn child,
Okay.
and because of the way it was, a kind of a we all have our things, so our childhood and our situations, and my situation was such that I was able to just kind of fight. I was so difficult that I could kind of do what I wanted to do. I wasn't like out of control. It was just, there wasn't a whole lot of push. Like, you should go to college. Well, I want to take a year off. Well, I mean, if that's what you're going to do, that kind of thing. Um, and sorry, loop me back to the question.
The question was about motivation. So, because for some people, it's just a rebellion. It's just a fuck you to the
Oh, right.
system. I'm gonna go do my own thing, and then that manifests as music.
So yeah, there is something to that. I think at a deeper level, because I've always felt like I wasn't, the system wasn't designed for me, and I know how that sounds, especially given my demographic. But like, school, I was great with learning, but I was horrible with homework, and I was good with tests, but tests weren't enough to pass you fully, that kind of thing. I always thought like I would prefer like a pass fail system over this 9 weeks of regular homework and assignments. Like, teach me what I need to know, I'll retain it. That's kind of always and so I had a bad attitude about it. So as kind of an underlying thing, there was probably a lot of rebellion there, but it was also, I had found this passion in music, because what I now know is I love to build. I just, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is, I love to build and I love to perform. And in music, when you're writing a composition, you're building a piece of art. You're building it, whatever your method is. My method was always like a cool tune, then layer on top of that. Then it was always layers, layers and layers and layers, iteration. And that's kind of the same way I do things in VRML. Was always, okay, here's what we're doing now. Let's quantify it. Let's make sure it's written down, repeatable. Okay, now we can look at it and go, all right, how can we iterate on this and make it better? How can we layer on top of this? And so that was really the motivator, was just that I have this constant need to be engaged building something, and music satisfied that craving. Now, the fact that I got into rock and metal, and like, I was raised on, or not raised on, but I grew up on like Rage Against the Machine, and that era of music. There was a lot of rebellion in that more deep city psychological sense, but the real motivator to music was the same motivator that pushed me to what I do in VRML. And it's just that I need to be building something all the time, and I love performing. So like, the mod stuff is building, and the caster stuff is performance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because there's a few ways I want to take this. Because obviously, I want to
Yeah,
stay on this subject, but I also want
cool.
to try and like transition it forward and eventually come into the whole VRML
Yeah, because
era of your life.
I do tangent a
No,
lot, so I
this
apologize
is
for
what,
that.
if you've seen other episodes, it's all about tangents. You start
Okay,
saying
cool.
something interesting, and I'm like, what? That's cool. Tell me more. So, well, because I know you did an interview with Yazifex, on Team Comet,
Yeah.
and in your interview with that, as part of the whole 2 hour interview, you spoke about going into other communities and like investing your time, effort, and sounds like what you're describing now about building. You build, you iterate, and then it sounded like you would move on. And then the most recent one was Echo, which you ended up staying in. What did like? Was there like an abrupt ending to this rock and roll lifestyle?
So,
Like, what was your exit out of that era of your life,
That's a
or did
that's
it?
I like how you did that. That's a great way, 'cause I didn't know where you were going, how you're, and you got there. That was great. So yes and no. It was abrupt, but it also wasn't. So the last serious group I was in, we were called Canthus. I don't remember what the word meant. I don't even remember if it was a real word, but that was what we were called. You can probably still find remnants of us out there
Yeah.
somewhere.
All
We
right.
weren't big or anything, but it's the internet. That ended abruptly. That was kind of after so many years of a lot of I don't want to say infighting, but just personal tension between
Right.
really between me and the other members, because there were some genuine ideological differences, and like outside of just the music, things that were more personal. Not like personal. We didn't hate each other, but there were a lot of there's a lot of pushing and not literal pushing, but, strife within the group, and eventually that kind of came to a head in one big argument, and
Right.
that's kind of when that argument kind of ended that abruptly. That was fairly abrupt, but I didn't immediately stop doing music. There was still kind of this trailing off for about a year and a half. I joined one more group um, that was much less serious. It was more for fun, but it being less serious, there's also a sort of flakiness to it that like practice with you'd show up, but it might not even happen, and that kind of thing. So that was very aggravating. And so eventually, just that kind of eventually it died off. It just kind of that the desire to write music sort of fell away, and I've never been able to really explain why that happened. I don't know why I lost that drive to always be writing, because I was always writing music. Always, there was always something I was working on, because it's that need to constantly build. And when it gone, that need to build, like I had nowhere to direct it for a while, and that's when your question about like what I referenced about joining these communities and leaving, that's when that started really happening a lot more, was when I kind of lost that direction. I lost that motivation, and I was kind of meandering around just looking for a place. And so after the music kind of it ended abruptly and then slowly teetered away, I started kind of, meandering through this bog of unknown and don't know what I'm doing. And, school didn't work out and the music thing didn't work out. What am I going to do? And I was like, well, I like VR. I can buy VR headset. I'm just going to get into that as a hobby. And then that's when I discovered all this. So again, tangent to get to where back to the VRML stuff, but that's kind of how that, it was abrupt, slow end, lost, and then found.
The abrupt ending, was it something that was brewing for a long time, or was it?
Yes.
Because it sounds like it. Because if it wasn't, then you would have just joined another band and you would have carried on and pursued that
Yeah.
career further.
Yeah. That was the personal thing had been brewing for a long time. There were a lot of things like it got to that point where I started asserting myself more and setting boundaries, and
Right.
those boundaries weren't respected.
Right.
And that was kind of the final straw,
Right.
and why that ended. Now I'm sure their recollection's probably different than mine, and I totally respect that. And I don't want to make it sound like they were all in the wrong and I was all in the right. That's certainly not reality. But from my perspective, that's kind of how it played out.
Why hadn't you asserted yourself before?
I was bad at asserting myself because that's a really deep question.
Well, like, why
That
the change? I get. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted. Go.
Well, no, because I actually wouldn't be too comfortable fully answering that question, so I
Okay.
apologize for that.
Yeah. No
But there
worries.
is like, for a long time, I would call myself non-confrontational, but I wasn't. It wasn't like I wasn't afraid of how you would react to something. I was afraid of how I might react to how you react to what I said. You know what I mean? So because I knew at the time, and it's not totally unheard of that I can be a little I can get angry sometimes, and I'm not. That's not something I'm proud of. It's something I'm always working on. But when I was younger, it was a real problem. I wasn't. I wouldn't call myself a hothead, but I also knew that I could get over emotional about something, and so I not having the coping skills or the mechanisms to handle that. Instead, I just avoided things. I just avoided confrontation altogether. And as I've gotten older, I've developed those coping skills. Some of them are just avoidance, but others, like just as you get older, you tend to calm down. So I don't tend to be as angry. I can't be. Anybody who's been working with me long enough knows that I can periodically express some anger about some things, but like I said, as I've gotten older, that's calmed down, and now I can be more assertive. Also, there's that thing about if you're direct with somebody, you're far more likely to end up in that position where you need to be angry. You know what I mean? You can get in front of those things, and that's the other thing I discovered. That's one of the coping mechanisms was if I am so stressed out about how they'll react to the thing, I need to just pull the band-aid off, let them know, let them react, and then pace myself in my response. You know what I mean? It's those sorts of strategies that you have to kind of figure out. I wish I didn't have to do it on my own like I did, but eventually I was able to work that out.
Cool. I really want to. I want to move on, but I want to stay on here as well, 'cause this is really interesting. Because I imagine, because you're a little bit older than me. I'm 29, so you've got a few years on me, like life experience. And have you found? Well, you said about settling down, but have you found as you've got older, you're like more accepting of your own anger? You're used to it. You're more familiar with it, and like, have you found places where you can express it and you don't judge yourself so much for having that side of yourself?
Dude, you're really digging here. Not in a bad way. That's like you're really because that's so. I have had to because especially in like, and I don't want to go into a political thing, but in the
Okay.
modern political climate, it's easy to get angry about things,
Right.
and that's kind of an avenue that I've like I have like a not anymore, but for like a time I had like a throwaway Reddit account where I could express that's not trolling,
A
not
troll.
hate,
You had
but
a troll account.
not a troll. No, it wasn't. It was not a troll account. It was an account where I could speak more honestly without
Right.
affecting because I have my SirDimwi account, and I don't
Right.
want to say things that I know are going to be off-putting to half the audience.
Okay.
So, I have that other account to be more true. No, I don't have it anymore, like I said, because I really don't like engaging in
Right.
that area because it is so toxic.
Right.
But there is that like there are those avenues of like it's like a righteous anger, if that makes sense. So, you're not
Right.
breaking rules or anything. I'm not trolling, but I'm also not mincing my words like I typically would in like a setting like this, if that makes sense.
I'll be honest, I don't follow. So you'd make this account and then you would engage in political
Yeah, like just not
arguments.
even necessarily political, just more because like under the SirDimwi title, because that's my main Reddit account is SirDimwi,
Right.
and under that title, the purpose of what I'm doing there is to promote the game, promote
Right.
positivity, promote teamwork, and all that stuff. I can't then be going on and expressing, uh, what a political position that isn't shared by like, and it's not like these are extreme positions or anything, but like you have, generally speaking, left and right. So if you take a left position, you're going to upset half the, half the population, which is on the
Yeah.
right. And if you take a right
Yeah.
position,
Yeah.
so I want to, in VRML and Echo Arena, my whole thing was escapism. So we don't want politics in our escapism. That's what we're here to get away from is stuff like that. So I had basically it was like the more real me account versus the SirDimwi me, not even the SirDimwi me, but like the curated,
Right.
SirDimwi brand me, if that makes sense. Because that was more like the SirDimwi Reddit account is a brand account more than a personal account. Whereas the, whatever throwaway account for whatever discussion was literally just a me account. So, and it's stuff that, like I said, because we all have our positions on things, and most people who know me know where I sit on things. Like you can,
Right.
if you poke around, you'll find out, where I sit politically, because I'm not exactly shy about it. But I also recognize that as the SirDimwi brand being out there serving escapism, it's not healthy to that purpose to engage on those topics. So yeah, you have that other account. So when you're talking about avenues to express anger, generally speaking, I avoid. I try to manage anger in a way that allows me, not allows, but prevents me from lashing out or breaking a thing. Because that was something I had a problem with, like break an object near me just because
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like that kind of stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
especially when
I
I was younger.
completely relate.
Yeah.
Completely relate.
So yeah, avoiding things like that, but there, that the avenue of like, there's like, we all have kind of like, when you feel righteously angry, you
Yeah.
feel like that is an acceptable form of anger. That's the one place you're allowed to be a little
Yeah.
over the top,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could go like the therapy
Yeah.
route with this because my follow up question I want to ask, but I don't want to ask for this podcast. I want to move on, but I'll say it anyway. Is like, well, why is it unjust for you to be angry? But then I feel like we're going to go down a therapeutic
Well,
route.
because I get angry over stupid things like what I would perceive as.
But well, the question is why can't SirDimwi, or whatever your real name is, be angry? Why can't you be angry? Like why have you got to have coping mechanisms for it?
Oh, well, it
Of
depends
course
on
you're
the
allowed to
avenue we're
be
talking
angry.
about. So, like, in the public setting, that's the SirDimwi brand, and the SirDimwi brand is serving
Yeah.
escapism. And so, if I do lash out angrily, I'm no longer serving escapism. I'm now serving whatever my opinion is,
Right.
and that's not what the SirDimwi platform is meant for. It's not meant to. In certain ways, there are certain things like human rights and things like that I will personally push for through the SirDimwi brand that
Yeah.
I think are important enough that they surpass concerns over politics and things like that. And that's why I'm very heavy about slurs and things like that. I don't know. I'm sure that you've maybe heard or maybe people have opinions about how I talk about slurs and how they are used, and I can be a little. A lot of people disagree with me where I draw the line. I draw the line very far out of this is considered a slur. This is also considered a slur. It might not be in this situation, but here, those sorts of nuances that I think are really important to the health and safety of our community that a lot of people really disagree on. So there are things like that that do come through, but it's the more the more divisive positions that we can take, particularly. See, we're also from being from different countries, those social pressures in politics feel a little bit different. You know what I
Right.
mean? So the things that I might not be comfortable talking about to you might just be, breakfast discussion. But over here might be the start of a fight. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing. I'm sure there's topics over there that over here would be nothing. So it's stuff like things. There's sort of more subjective lines. I don't view them as subjective, but I can see how the argument would be they're subjective. That's why they're divisive. Yada yada yada.
But are you made to feel bad for having those opinions and then
No,
having anger around them?
depending on what it is. Because the anger thing is really broad. That's a broad
Yeah, of course.
sort of thing. So politically speaking, I don't feel bad about my anger at all. I'll call state legislatures. I've called senators, left voicemails. I don't feel bad about that. Not no nothing threatening, but I'll let them know. I'll let them know how I feel. I don't feel bad about. But if you and I are trying to put together a tournament format, or we're enforcing a rule and we have a disagreement, and I think your position is not reasonable, that will also trigger anger in me. And that's the anger I feel is not justified, that I should not be getting angry with you, even though I might feel like your position in this setting is not maybe not even as reasonable as my position. And so the way I phrase it, and this is going to sound very off-putting, but it's the anger is towards incompetence, but it's that unfair thing where you judge someone harsher than you judge yourself. You know what I mean? In certain respect, you might miss a nuance or something, and so that's what I see as unfair. Because I'll get angry, and the anger is because of what I perceive as incompetence. But then I'm like, that's not necessarily incompetence, or it may be a misunderstanding, or it may be just genuinely a different opinion. And so that's why the anger isn't justified, because it is a subjective sort of position, or even if I feel it's objective, I'm not the be all end all of knowledge or rightness, or correctness. So that anger is the unjustified sort of anger.
So is it actually about the rational understanding with someone and getting someone to see your point of view, or is it more, or is it a hint of what they think of you? So if you know who you are in your own mind and you feel it's not being communicated,
I do not care what people think of me at all. It drives my girlfriend crazy. I don't care. I don't. That's one thing. It's almost an issue sometimes. It actually got me in trouble, when I was doing discipline stuff, because if I'm delivering bad news, it doesn't bother me. Well, obviously, if it was your loved one is dying, I don't want to deliver that. But you broke a rule, you're getting some AP. I can get very callous because it just doesn't. I'm just here's the information. You don't like that? I'm sorry, you don't like that, but here's the information. And I can start speaking more, especially in type. I can speak very directly. That's the way I phrase it. I'm sure other people would phrase it differently.
well, there's so kind of the same subject, but in a little bit of a different way. So you talk about separating these feelings that you talk about, how like your opinion, you delved into politics a tiny bit as well. What are you trying to keep separate from that? You spoke about your brand. You said the brand SirDimwi. What is that?
So promoting VR esports. I've started more honing that in more recently because with all these big changes, you kind of have to figure out who you are, where
Yeah.
you are,
Yeah.
and it's really about promoting VR esports as like the next thing. It's like the next. I want to do a local VR esports youth league. You know what I mean? Because I
Mm.
believe in, and it's not like I think it's I believe in it like we need this thing as a moral guidepost in our collective society. It's nothing like that. It's just like I
Mm.
believe in what this can be for for some people and what they can get out of it and what I know I get out of it, and I want to be able to facilitate that for other people because I'm good at it. I like
Mm.
doing it. And there's a viability to it. Maybe not right this moment, but like as things continue to grow, there
Mm.
continues to be a viability to it. And I feel like again I got off the question a little bit.
Well, if someone's watching this right now, so there's a 13-year-old kid
Okay.
that plays the game. Their mum's gonna watch this, and they're going like, "What is this? This 3D VR gaming? Like,
Right.
why is it so important?" How would you respond to that in layman terms? Of like, what is going on here? Why are you investing so much of your time, effort, resource into this?
So a lot of it just has to do with I constantly need to build, and I get a lot of personal satisfaction out of running tournaments and organizing the stuff and coordinating the stuff. There is a personal, almost a cynical satisfaction out of that. So I do have to be upfront and recognize that it's not
Yeah, yeah,
all altruism, right?
yeah,
And a viable career path and
yeah.
potentially yada yada yada, all that stuff. Um, But as far as like why this, why did I latch onto this thing? One,
Yes.
I've always been a bit of a futurist. You know, it's hard to. That's a whole other thing of like just the size of the universe and exploration, and but that also gets to nihilism
Okay, no,
and
no, no.
other
Let's do
stuff.
that.
But anyways,
Let's do that tangent. So where did that come
okay.
from? Were you like a 13-year-old kid and you were like, oh my god, the world is huge, like the space and everything? What was there a moment like that, or was it like
Uh,
later in life? Was it
It's actually
VR?
well, VR. I discovered like I knew I wanted to do VR like when I was really really young. Back in like 93, 94. There's I'm pretty sure it's still there, and you can actually find it on like VR YouTube. The Carousel of Progress at Walt Disney World Orlando. It's in the Magic Kingdom. I can even tell you how to get there. You go in the park, you go right, you go down this way. It's in the
Right,
World of
right.
Tomorrow, whatever the Tomorrowland, whatever they call it. It's
Yeah.
right near Space Mountain. And what used to be the Alien ride. It's not the Alien ride anymore. I don't know what it is now. But and the Carousel of Progress took you through like you start in like the early 1900s and just technological process through
Ooh.
generations. And it's really old school. It's animatronic, and you're on like a moving. I don't think the stage moves. I think the seating moves. Like so, the seating is like a donut around a
Mm.
circular stage that's cut into pie pieces, and so you can move between each section. And they do this presentation of like the decade and the technology at the
Mm.
time, and then the final one, they updated it in like 93, 94, and that's about the time I went and saw this in person. I was
Mm.
8, 9, 10 years old. And the final scene is supposed to be in like 2022, right? So like we're already past the final scene now. And it's the family at Christmas. It might actually be like 2026, whatever it is. The family sitting at Christmas, and they're the dad's burning the turkey, and the kids are talking about what they want from Santa, and Grandma is sitting on a chair in the kitchen playing VR that they're watching on the TV, and it's like a space shooter game. And I remember thinking, like, I want that. Like, I want that thing. Like, that is so cool. I want to do that. And at around the same time, I think it might have been the same trip. I don't know because I say I'm chronologically challenged. I can't remember when things happen unless I have a very specific reference to pin it to. So there was a time, and if you go watch day one, the video I did for Ignite
Yes.
on their channel, I talk about a kiosk when I was a child and 15 minutes for $10, something like. Those are the actual the nuanced details in that video are kind of fabrication is probably not the right word, but like I had to fill in some gaps to build a cohesive narrative for the video. But
Yeah.
it was at Disney Quest, and it was a kiosk. I think once we paid to get in, we didn't have to pay for any more. It was like you just sign up and you get a 10-minute slot or whatever. and it was massive. The helmet was huge, came out like this. The controllers were like 10 pounds. They were heavy. You sat on something that like you had to like straddle this thing that came up the center of the platform for whatever reason. I don't know why it was there. And you were inside of a ring, like those walking rings people use, except they weren't
Yeah.
there to walk. They were to make sure you didn't walk, right?
Right.
And the actual experience was super low poly, like worse than the original PlayStation graphics, like that. Think of like what people like the Tomb Raider, the Lara
Mm.
Croft from the original Tomb Raider, like that, but a little bit worse and less colors, fewer colors. And I remember that I always refer to that as a promise that we're gonna have this one day, and it's only a matter of time. And it was when I do remember specifically, it was sometime like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when the 3D movies thing really started. Like, it was this big trend for a while. Everything was coming out in 3D. Spy Kids 3D, everybody still remembers for whatever
Yeah, it's a
reason,
great film. I
right?
love that film.
Exactly. So all that stuff was going on. I was going, we're there. We're right there. We just need to figure out how to do that in front of our faces. Someone just has to do it. And
Yeah.
literally, as I was in my bedroom going, someone needs to do it, Oculus was doing it. I just didn't know yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And eventually Oculus came out and all that stuff. So again, I don't remember the original question, but that's where like the VR, like this that was kind of a big motivator. I was big into sci-fi. I didn't know I was big into sci-fi yet. I wasn't really into space yet. That actually kind of came later in life, like in after high school, early 20s. And it was actually, this is going to get a little deep. When I was 24, a cousin of mine died tragically. She was only 20. I'm pretty 19 or 20. It was this tragic accident, preventable but tragic, and not preventable but preventable. Like, kids being, they were hanging out at this thing that is generally dangerous, but kids hang out at stuff. There was like a place that they hung out at, and she fell down a grain elevator and died. It was over in Texas, and yeah, like 12 years ago, and that was a defining moment of my life. That's when everybody has that like discovering your mortality moment when
Yeah.
when you're growing up as a kid. They say you live like you're immortal, and as a kid you're like, I know, what are you talking about? I know I die. But you don't actually realize yet
No.
what they're talking about. That one day it clicked and you go, oh shit,
Yeah.
oh, I might die. You know what I mean? That was me at 24. And that's when, because I'm not a religious person, but I needed something to start coping with that sudden new like existential fear. And that was learning about space, learning about physics, learning about the quantum realm and all this. To be very clear, like, I don't know the math behind any of it, but I'm really good at concepts. And so just discussion and articles and all that stuff, just kind of using that. And I recognize I'm no expert. I'm a layman among laymen's, but that's where I went in order to cope with that existential fear that even to this day, I feel all the time. But that's
Yeah.
kind of where the space thing and the real interest in sci-fi and futurism, that's really where the drive started, was from that fear of death, from the fear of the unknown. And so it kind of like, it was like you can like look back and see the points on the pathway that
Yeah.
get you there. You know what I mean? But they are all so different. Like, this was, the Wheel of Progress was this amazing, positive, little life moment that stuck with me forever. But then, the death of a loved one, the tragic death of, a cousin that's so young, younger than you, that makes you realize what, more about reality and more about, but they're all, you follow that path and you see the connection and how you get to where you are. It's really interesting how that kind of works out like that.
Does like space exploration fit into that as well, or not really?
Oh, dude, I believe we should already be sending seed ships places, like, full on. I think it is horribly irresponsible that we're not doing everything we can to spread from Earth. It's only a matter of time before just something happens. You know what I mean? Like, something, whether it's now or in a billion years, like, something's going to happen eventually. And if we care about our survival as a species, we got to start spreading out. Now, you also have the counter perspective of like, well, it kind of sounds like we're a bit of a parasite. And it's like, yeah, but what is life? Like, what is the point of life? Then you get into the deeper questions, yada, yada, yada. And then that drives me to nihilism, and there's also hellism,
Yeah.
all this, so but yeah, that's kind of yeah. I believe it is absolutely imperative that we explore space, and I think we're also kind of at growing up. I always read about this the technological singularity. That's something I
Yes.
read a lot
Yes.
about between like 2004 2012 time period.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing like the estimations, like the 2020s, 2030s, that kind of thing, and watching what AI is doing right now.
Yep.
We're there.
Literally, like this year is crazy
Yeah,
for AI.
we're there,
Crazy.
and we're there. Like this, it's happening.
Yeah. Literally.
But then 10 years from now, we're not going to recognize a lot of the stuff that, you know what I mean. Like this is beyond cell phones.
Yeah.
We don't have the imagination to really. Somebody has said what's going to happen, and someone will look back in 10 years ago. That guy had it right, but like we don't know who that guy's going to be until we get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or girl, or non-binary person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That was a good tangent. That was awesome. Well, the next question logically in these interviews is how did you get into VR? It sounds like whatever. So that experience that you had at Disneyland there, looking at that setting in 2026 or 2022, whatever it was, that inspired the crap out of you to think
Yeah.
about the future and become a futurist, and that combined with the nihilism, as you called it. Um, when did you first come across VR? Was it like Kickstarter 2012, Oculus?
Well, aside from the kiosk experience, like the
Right,
Oculus stuff, I was Reddit. I was on Reddit. I joined
right.
Reddit in like 2009, 2010. I don't have that account. I've had like 7 or 8 accounts since then.
Yeah,
I don't like keeping a trail,
yeah,
and that's not anything specific. I just it's almost like that. It's kind of a mild, not even paranoia. I just don't like leaving a trail. You're not going to find my Facebook. You might, but you only see a picture. You know what I mean? What was the question? Oh, how to get into VR?
yeah. How did you get to VR? But as you were
Yeah.
saying,
Oh,
I
yeah.
was
That's
thinking of the
right.
next one. Yeah, go on.
So I was always on Reddit, and Reddit back then was mostly like basically the same demographic that was into VR, which was like late teens, early 20s, tech heads, like guys in coding. I wasn't in coding, but I wanted to be in coding. Millennials, like that kind of demographic. Same demographic that was the early VR adopters, like preseason season 1 of Echo or of VRML and ESL. Like those folks tended to be, you know, late teens, early 20s tech bros.
Yeah,
And because I tended to follow the same stuff as those guys, I tended to see a lot of those same developments. And so
right.
Oculus, when they were starting to do their things, DK1 and DK2 and all that, I was seeing all that happening. I was seeing the demos of like someone playing Team Fortress 2, with a VR headset on, and what that looked like, and someone playing Ark with a VR headset on, stuff like that. So I was watching it develop, and it was in 2017. I can tell you when it was in summer of 2017. I don't know when the CV1 was actually released, but I know it was the summer of 2017. I had a little money saved up, and I said, I'm buying a VR headset. I don't know which one, but I'm going to buy one. And it was between the Oculus Rift and the, what was it called? Oh my God, it's been so long now.
Vive.
Vive, yes, thank you. It was the Vive. And it came down to the Vive, from what I was reading, the Vive had better tracking, but the
Yeah,
Oculus had better visuals. And I was like,
yeah.
look, tracking's cool, but I want visuals. And so that's why I picked the Oculus. And of course, that's one of the first things I discovered was Echo. And I tried everything at first, but over the years, Echo just became the thing.
Was there anything that captured your imagination before you did get into Echo, or was it actually very early? You were in Echo and you were like, okay, yeah, I don't want to play
The,
anything else.
the first thing I did, the very first thing I did in VR was play Star Trek Bridge Crew. That was the first thing
I
I did
still
because I
haven't
kept
played
seeing
it.
videos of it. Oh, it's a great
I know.
novelty.
Oh, okay. I
It's
need
a
to
great
get it. I need to
novelty.
try it.
I think they could make it. Maybe I haven't played it in years, so maybe they made it really cool eventually. But it was one of those like it's fun at first, or it's fun if you have a group of friends that are all having a good time with it. But eventually, like it's very simple, and you kind of start doing the same things over and over again, and all the jokes get old. You know what I mean? So it's easy to. I think they could have made it really, really, really cool, but they also made it very Trek-like, which you know what I mean? Star Trek is notorious for kind of being a little boring, even though I love Star Trek. Like, don't get me wrong, but like compared to like a sci-fi epic like Star Wars, and I'm not doing the comparison thing. I'm just saying like it's not so much action; it's a lot of philosophy and discussion, and that's kind
Right.
of how it plays out in the game. Even though it's an awesome experience being on the bridge, dude, I fell asleep one time in it. I fell asleep. I woke up on the bridge of the Star Trek Enterprise, which was the wildest experience.
Uh,
But yes, the first thing I did was Star Trek, and then I Beat Saber, of course.
yeah.
I had to check out like the traditional games, mouse keyboard games like Arc,
Right.
other games that had the option. That was not that was once you experience a game that lets you move around, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mouse and keyboard is just not it's not fun. Like I'm
Mm.
not going to do it. I'd rather just play on my monitor if I'm going to do mouse and keyboard. So, yeah, no, Echo was early on because I did not have because it was Lone Echo first. So Lone Echo is
Yeah.
what I played first. I bought
Okay.
Lone Echo, and I don't remember. According to when I look it up, I'm pretty sure when I first started playing Lone Echo, Echo Arena was still part of Lone Echo. You
Yeah.
loaded it through that menu, but I don't actually remember that. So my timeline might be a little fuzzy by a few weeks. But I'm pretty sure it was August of 2017 is when I played my first game of Echo Arena, and yeah, it was very quick. It was within a month of me getting the headset. I was playing Echo,
Mm.
and I wish I had gotten into it like a month sooner because like as you know, people will join now. It's like, oh, it's so late. Like, well, a year ago, you'd say, oh, it's so late. And they'd be like, no, there's plenty of time left. Because even back then, I felt like I missed the boat. You know what I mean? Which is wild to think.
That's
But like
wild.
even I felt that way. You know, because I missed the beta. You know what I mean? Um, and yeah, so Echo was one of the first things I played. Was one of the first, not the first, but one of the handful of first. And it's the only one that I still play. Well, up until January, anyways.
What came first, casting or moderating?
Casting, 100%. Yeah, yeah,
Casting.
casting. That was so there was Pizza League. I played in Pizza League. That was when I first started getting into the competitive stuff. I missed ESL. No, I didn't.
Mm.
I played in season 3 of ESL. I actually played one weekend in season 2 of ESL with Hasco and Ender's Lot, and then season 3 played all season. But we were last place the whole time. It was just fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I started actually getting competitive during Pizza League. I still wasn't, that great, but I was, well, it's all relative. And then it was Pizza League turned into VRML. VRML came in. Everyone for Pizza
Yep.
League,
Yep.
there
Yep.
was that thing.
Yeah.
And so I played originally. I was just gonna be. I wanted to try casting, but I never actually done it except for like we tried Echo Grand Prix and Beer League, and I like mock casted that just to like see what it would look like if we did cast it.
Mm.
And they were recruiting casters for VRML. That was Powder was already doing his thing. He was already the head, the lead guy.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, well, I'm going to play, so they probably don't want someone who does both, so I'm not going to apply. Well, during that first week, I was watching a game. It was the first week of the first of preseason, so it would have been November 2019. Powder on cast said, "Hey, we're still looking for more casters. If you want to cast, apply." And I was like, "Well, if they're still looking, they
Mm.
probably won't mind that I'm a player." Obviously, we know now that like it doesn't matter if you're a player, but like at the time, I didn't know what the rules were, and I wasn't investigating. I was just like, I wonder. So I applied. I used the video from Echo Grand Prix, which I'm pretty sure doesn't exist anymore. Um,
What's
and
that? Sorry. Echo Grand Prix.
Echo Grand Prix, yeah, it was something. It's a bit of a legend now, but
Okay.
so it was something we did as kind of an off night in beer league. We decided not to do the normal beer league night. We were
Right.
like, let's do racing, and we used the combat maps. Me and SN would go into the combat maps and pick
Yeah.
out a route to follow,
Yeah.
and that's how it was born. And you can actually, I think it's just Echo Grand Prix on YouTube. I have the original like tutorial videos on the tracks, and I have one on explaining like the basics of boost racing.
Mm.
And yeah, we did a couple races. The first champions of Echo Grand Prix were Zach W and Andy W. For fun fact, the W brothers were the first champions, and they were the only champions, unfortunately. But yeah, Echo Grand Prix was a fun idea. They actually. I had been someone at one point. One of the devs said, that we're watching what you guys are doing. It's kind of an inspiration. This is really
Yeah.
cool. And then, yeah, there may or I like to think that they looked into it. The devs did, but I think with how things happened after the release of Combat, like if you go all the way back to then, you can probably see why that was never something they did.
Did you play a lot of Combat back in those days?
No, I got to like level 24 just so I could get this this color pattern. Yeah.
Okay. Because that sounds awesome, doing a Grand Prix. If that's easy to set up and it's easy to record people's times, like
That's
the
the
top
thing.
players are all on CV1 now. They'd love that.
So it's not so because of the way combat parties always had these buggy issues, so it made it really difficult to get everybody into the same game. And once you were in there, it was a lot of fun.
Right.
But at the time, like you have to like, it's hard to keep an eye on everyone all the time. So it's kind of easy to cheat. But I had been talking to NTS friends. About a year ago, we were talking about he was figuring out he was like I can set checkpoints and we can use those as time checkpoints. And I was like, oh, that's great. But then we couldn't do it in combat. We were going to do it Echo. I don't remember. Or I think he was talking about doing it Echo. Don't quote me. Don't go to NTS France. Do not bug him about this. I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that to you. Whoever's watching right now, do not bug him about this. No, I don't mean the person live watching. I mean anybody watching this video. Do not bug NTS France. But yeah, we were talking about doing that. And then it just never came to fruition. And then everything kind of, ended up how it is. But yeah, it was something we really wanted to do, and we always talked about going back to it eventually. But combat never really got the support it needed for us to be able to do that. Because one of the things we could have had really easy courses if they let us open the doors on those escort maps, just point to point. You know what I mean? You don't have to memorize a course; you just go from one point to the next, or one point to the other point. But they never really. I remember I told one of the devs that it was an offshoot of a conversation.
Yeah.
He said something about when we were going to bring it back or something, and I said whenever we can open the doors on combat, and he goes for real, and he didn't say for real. He said something like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "Yeah, like you let us do that. We'll definitely. I'll do it tomorrow." But we never actually got a patch to let us open those doors.
All right. I would love to spectate and commentate on that, watching a race go by and having the cameras set up in each room and watching like zoom.
Maybe
so
someday
cool.
we can get something similar to that, but we'll have to wait and see what's on the horizon.
Well, I'm sure. Like, how many games are about to be come out this year, next year? Like, someone's
Right?
going to think of doing something like that with the regrab
Yeah.
mechanic. Okay, so before we move on, it's casting. Is this something that you knew in the back of your mind you'd end up doing it in some form or way?
It was one of those things. Listening, like watching sports and listening to sports radio, like the games on the radio and stuff like that. I was always a football a fan of American football until I discovered hockey, and then I became
Right.
a huge fan of hockey until I discovered Echo, and then that kind of satisfied that thing. That's why, like, if you watch if you watch the 3-minute meta videos, a lot of my references is in specific to like the defensive rollouts and stuff like that,
Yes.
like the 3-4-4 or the 3-4, 2-4, whatever. I don't even remember the numbers anymore. 2-2, 2-1-1, 1-1-2, all that stuff. That was something me and Essen did. We both were hockey fans, and we both needed a way to communicate our formations, and that's
Yeah.
how hockey communicates formations, like a 3-1-1 or 3-2 or a 2-1-1, yeah, whatever. However they do it in hockey, I don't remember anymore. But the 1-2-2 I think is a really common one. The 1-4 trap, the 4-1 trap, however that goes. All that stuff was stuff we were like that. So that's where that comes from, is that being a fan of hockey. But watching all this tangents, watching all that stuff, listening to the announcer, I was like, this is something I could do, but I don't know how to get into that. And because I'm a talker. I don't know if any of you noticed, I'm a talker. And like, if I can make a job out of talking, wouldn't that be amazing? And so when I kind of wanted to do it, but I never really had an avenue. And Echo Grand Prix was like the idea. There was that thought of like, well, I could cast this since like nobody's done this. So, like, the expectation's not going to be high. And then when they were looking for casters for VRML, I had the thought of like, I think I could, but I've never done it. I don't know. And then eventually,
What's
I'm
up?
getting the headset low. What time is it? It's not been that long. Okay, I'm gonna have to plug my headset. I'll just get
Yeah,
an
no
extension
worries.
cord. It's
No
all
worries.
right.
Battery break. Taking a moment.
Yeah, well, I can get an extension cord to plug it in.
Yeah, go for it. So you
But
sort yourself out.
well,
That's cool.
I'll finish the thought.
Okay.
Casting. Oh yeah, and so when I first started doing it, I still wasn't sure I actually could. But then, so it was a multi-stage process of, because I never really thought, like, I never knew I could do it. But I thought I could. There was a reasonable, like, if I practiced this, I probably could. And the first stage was realizing, oh, this is just performance. I'm just on another stage. This is just another form of stage performance. That was one click, and then the second click was, all I'm doing is all I'm doing is geeking out about a video game that I love in front of people that actually want to hear what I have to say. Versus, going on about this thing I like to people, like, your parents, your friends, and your day to day, your work buddies. Like, they might have some passing interest, but they're not, an enthusiast like you are. And so casting became like a way for me to gush about Echo Arena in front of an audience of like-minded enthusiasts. And so I wasn't driving everyone else in my life crazy about this awesome thing I had discovered. Yeah.
Feel free to take a battery break
Okay, yeah.
if you want to get plugged in, and then we'll carry on. I want to ask about the 3-minute meta.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let me just let me find.
no worries.
I'll be right back.
And he's off. He's still in the lobby. Is he gone? It's timed out. All right, you're there. He's back in the room. Cool. You just got comfy in your chair. I saw you go like this.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting closer to the wall. Uh-oh.
He's gone again. See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya. If you press the buttons on the controllers, there's boosters. You can float up.
I have to be careful not to unplug the whatever else is plugged in here, because then my internet will drop. Okay. All right. Should
Comfortable?
Be
Good?
Ish. But yeah.
Okay. If you need to adjust it, that's fine.
No.
What percent are you on? Is it like 15?
I didn't actually look. It won't tell me. It was just red and very close to dead.
Oh, that's low. That's like 5% then. Okay. You mentioned 3-minute meta. So that is a series that you put out very early on when it came to strategy in this game. Basically explaining team strategy in this game using your knowledge of hockey and perhaps American football as well. It must have been in your knowledge as well. And you applied how to play a game at a high level. You provided a meta that everyone adopted. And I rewatched those videos a good, like, triple figures, like hundreds of times. I rewatched that.
I appreciate that.
I would just listen to your voice. So then we talking 2-2, man. 2-1, 1. Yeah, I feel a lot of people leveled up their gameplay from watching those. You provided the meta to level up the game. So this is where the question was going to go, was that a part of casting? So you talk about talking about something that you love to people that are actually interested in it. Was it enjoyable to be, and my words, you don't have to be overly humble about it, but being a pioneer in the meta of the game as well? So as you're talking through games live, you're also explaining what's happening and breaking it down for people.
So the relation is tangential. So I always, that was kind of, so the YouTube channel was kind of, the SirDimwi brand kind of coalesced over time. And I hate using that phrase, like the SirDimwi brand, but like that's effectively what it ultimately becomes in certain respects. And the YouTube channel was originally, I just liked watching YouTube videos. I liked, like when I picked up a new game, I liked just consuming the YouTube content, like the tutorial, tips you should know, things you should know. Like I love consuming that stuff. I watched before I was playing Echo. One of the games I was playing a lot was World of Warcraft. I played World of Warcraft for years and years and years prior to that, but like I was in one of my hot streaks at the time, playing WoW, and I was watching Taliesin and Evitel. I was watching Bellular Gaming. All these people who like got their start in World of Warcraft, and I was like, I wouldn't mind doing that. I wouldn't mind making YouTube videos. I kind of like creating stuff, and video editing in that capacity wasn't so dissimilar to writing music in like Audacity or Fruity Loops or something like that. So it was this side interest I always had was just YouTube, was just making videos and making content. And so you referenced I made those videos early on. In my head, those were years late. Not now, obviously looking back, I don't feel that way, but at the time, Martin the Third had already had videos out. Venom was already putting content out, and all I had ever done was a few highlight reels, and that was really it, like beer league highlight reels that you can't find anymore for various reasons. Mostly for concern over people's professional lives. It wasn't, nobody actually crossed any particular lines. But like the wrong boss sees the wrong video. You know what I mean? So so we were on. Loop me back to the question real quick.
You're talking about content creation. So I was asking about the using explanation of the meta affecting how you cast and like breaking down games, but then you started talking about content creation, which is also very interesting. Is that something you want to keep going with, or at the time?
Well, that's getting back to the 3-minute meta stuff, and that's because so like I always just wanted to make content, and then through casting, because the thing is, like, I wasn't a pioneer of the meta. I was someone who was just watching because I was casting so much Echo. I was watching so much Echo, and I was getting this meta perspective, the bird's eye view perspective that you don't get as a player generally unless you're watching tape. And that had become my primary experience, was from that bird's eye view. And I was like, I'm picking up on these trends that I can use terminology that I'm familiar with, that me and Essen used to use, to explain the trends that I'm seeing. And so that's why the very first video I expressed it like, this is only my interpretation of what I'm seeing. I don't know how true it is ultimately. I don't know how useful it's going to be to you as the viewer, but I know based on what I'm watching, this is what I'm seeing. And that's why, like, my favorite of the 3-minute meta is that very first one, because to me, even as I remember I was talking to Gilligan as I was writing that script, and I was like, dude, I just discovered something. I just realized something. And it's the whole thing about how basketball has two halves, hockey has a half and a neutral zone, and Echo Arena kind of has a half a neutral zone, but really it's broken down like this. And when I had made that discovery as I was writing the script for that video, which is wild to think. But like for me, it was this moment of clarity, of understanding the game better. And I was like, if I can provide that same nuanced clarity that I'm getting from just talking it out, that'd be great. And so that was kind of it wasn't intended as an aside to the casting. It was an incidental consequence of the desire to just make content and this understanding I was obtaining from casting, and I just like explaining things. I like to explain things thoroughly. That's why I really like writing announcements for VRML, because I like to be able to construct the announcement in a way that's digestible. It not always is, sometimes you have to really pick and choose your words, your phrasing, but I like doing that kind of stuff. And so it was kind of the wedding of these two different motivators that kind of created that series.
Have you, like, looking back now, it has been a couple of years since you've done those 3-minute meta series, and you talk about iterating. You like to iterate on things once they're done. Did you ever have an idea of how you'd go back, revisit, and refine? Is there anything that you would change looking back at those?
Yes and no. I have periodically been like, I want to redo them because I want to update them. But the thing was, most things hadn't changed much. And the things that had were nuances that weren't part of those videos. So like, when I made those videos, I think it may have still been that some teams used the rings to launch. Not all teams. Most teams were PE launching at that time, but that wasn't something I included in the video because that wasn't really the subject of the video. And things like anchor shots, anchor shooting became really, really popular at certain ELO ratings in VRML, on the VRML ladder. It became really, really popular, but that wasn't the point of the 3-minute meta videos. Wasn't tips and tricks. It was meta. It was game strategy. It was team level strategy, team perspective. So a lot of those nuances that did change over time really didn't change in that meta, like the 2-1-1, the 2-2, all that stuff. You might see nuanced interpretations of it, but it's all basically the same thing. One thing I wanted to go back and do was I wanted to redo the bubble defense video, because I did discover over time that teams were deploying the same sort of defensive rollouts in bubble defense as they were on joust defense. You were still getting, you have a one, basically it was like a 1-3, it was a 1-2-1 basically, where you'd have one person kind of roaming, two people protecting the bubble, and one person in goal. Or you would end up with a 2-1-1 with an aggressive stack going out, attacking the chain and keeping one guy back to protect the bubble and one guy in the goal. Or you would see a 2-2. You'd have two roaming chains because they thought they would be quick enough to get back to the goal. Or you would see a 1-2-1 in that you would send one guy way out, second stack to attack that pass. You know what I mean? You were literally getting those same configurations, because ultimately when you look at it, and this is what I kind of like about it, but also you start discovering really the edges of what the meta can be. All you're doing is, how can you divide 4 individuals up? Like, that's really it. How can you divide them up? 2-2, 1-1-1-1, man. 1-2-1, 2-1-1. Like, that's really all you're doing. And you eventually just hit a numerical limit. Like, you can only do that so many different ways. And so, on the one hand, you are getting a better understanding of the game, but also on the other hand, you're discovering this sort of like, real ceiling on the variations you can really deploy. Now, of course, when you get into this 3D environment, and it's not just a 2D plane, you've got all 3 directions to work with, all 6, you know what I mean, all 3 dimensions to work with. The nuances are where the variation comes in. That's really where the variation. So that 3-minute meta series, if you go back and look, it's very top level. There's so much missing from it that you could at any point go back and adjust or whatever. But really, the only video I would actually want to go back and adjust is the bubble defense video, because I think everything else was basically what it is.
Did you ever want to pursue like a role as a coach? Did you ever want your brand to go that direction?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But that was because of the moderating, admin, lead caster, production lead, all that other stuff. I just didn't have time for it. And it bugged me for a while. Oh my.
Okay.
It bugged me for a while. I don't know why it transported me way over there. I was just resetting my orientation because I accidentally tilted up. But it bugged me for a while that. Sorry, I was making sure I didn't unplug that.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll restart the sentence. It did bug me for a while that I was constantly getting it for years. I got regular requests for team coaching, personal coaching, and it was the kind of thing I had such a demand for it. I could have like started charging for it, like as a thing to do to make money.
Yeah.
And I even thought about doing that, but like, I just couldn't. If I was going to coach, I wanted to be a team's coach, and I wanted to coach that team up the ladder. I wanted to be that guy. I didn't want to be someone who comes in once or twice, charges you 20 or $40. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm not at all. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But that's not the role I wanted to play. I wanted to be, if I was going to be a coach, because I was a coach for Team Toxin. I think, what was it, season 2 or season 3? I don't remember the exact season. They're probably offended that I can't remember. The Team Toxin, they were an amazing team for the season they played in, and in retrospect, they got knocked out of there was one season we did the rookie finals because that was the first this big obvious distinction between new teams and old teams. Right. And so it was easy to distinguish who the rookie teams were and just put them into their own finals that season. The Toxin was one of those teams that made it into the rookie finals, and they got knocked out by a team that had a Smurf on them. We later discovered, which is really upsetting because that it was one of those situations where you look back and you go, now I see that was not fair. But it is what it is, and I feel bad about that. I wish they could have had the run that they deserved. But that was also the one. It was Ding. Ding is who won that tournament, and they went on to I think they almost got to Master Tier. Their players ended up in Master Tier. Some of their players ended up in Master Tier. But yeah, I did want to do coaching, but it was something I couldn't do it in the way I desired to with everything else that I was doing.
Fair play. So I've got some selfish questions now. So,
okay.
I mean, that I've done a little bit of casting. I was involved in the finals for season 6 of VRML, and I've done a little bits here and there as well around that. You have one of the best voices in the game. You're up there. I think you share the podium with Palador in terms of energy on cast, your breakdown of the game as it's happening. But I think Palador takes it with the puns. He's great with his wordplay.
Well, that's fair. Well, also he's a large part of the reason he helped me train to keep the energy up. So he's a large part of me getting to where I got. So I can never not give Palador his due. He's due a lot.
What was your journey like? Because for some people it's about finding your voice. You start out, you suck, and then you just work it out. You find out how to control your energy. You find out how to bounce off of another caster. You find out how to break the game as you're literally recording what happens. Pass to that person, and then start calling out what's actually happening at a meta level. Was that a journey for you, or did you really just hit the ground running? This is familiar.
I did not hit the ground running at all. I listened back to early, my first cast. My first cast is still out there. You can definitely find it. It's on the YouTube page. Nice. And I'm boring. I'm very boring. I'm very monotone, and I sound somewhat disinterested. And but my personality is such that I'm a loud person. I'm loud and I'm excitable. I make noise. I laugh heartily. I'm just a loud person. I come from a loud family. And it was one of those things I had to just get comfortable. So not just, I make that sound so flippant. I had to first get comfortable being myself on stream. That's what that for me was just not be a caster, not say the right things. I just need to be myself first, because I know I'm going to put an energy out there that's going to help me push forward, because I'm just loud. I know I can lean into that, and that was part of that initial process. And then from there, I was already at a point in my life where I could listen to myself back in recordings and it didn't bother me anymore. I know everybody goes through that where you just can't listen to yourself.
Yeah.
I had already gotten past that by that point. I recorded myself. I'd made YouTube videos on dumb things for years, and not YouTube videos, but just content. I just recorded stuff and did things, and I just got used to it. And now I'm at the point I said this once in front of Palador. Now I'm at the point where I can just listen to myself all day, and Palador goes, "We know, Tim, we know." Because I've been accused of being someone who likes to hear myself talk, and I know what the phrase means, and it's generally true. I do, and so that was the first thing, was just being myself on stream, and then from there it was try not to say so much, try not to, if you pause, you know what I mean, just kind of learn to trust yourself to say the right thing, And if it's not the right thing, no one's going to remember in 2 minutes anyways. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of where I had to get. So it was a process. The first 2 seasons was a process, but I think by season 2, which is preseason, season 1 for the first 2. By season 2, I was very comfortable. But really, by the finals of season 1 is where I think I was getting comfortable with everything and finding my voice and all that, and learning to really always go from the diaphragm and project and and then after that, there's it's all still growth. Learn to non-gendered use non-gendered language, and that's not even
Right.
anything in particular. That's like nobody wants to be misgendered, and we're all genderless robots. You know what I mean? You don't want to you don't want to be called a she. I don't want to be called a she. She doesn't want to be called a he. You know what I mean? Like, so that's another thing you have to learn over time is like don't assume that that's a he, because that's my default. Like everybody's a he because all the robots look like he's. You know what I mean? And unless the name is obvious, so stuff like that. Learning habits, things like if I forget what to say, jump into whatever, like just talk about this, whatever I need to talk, and instead of because you can fall into like a stutter trap, you kind of lose track and you can't figure out where to pick back up, and it's a whole thing. Just say whatever. Just say, oh yeah, and we're back on it. And I'm just gonna hand it up to you, whatever it is, to just like keep things moving along. And yeah, the was a big thing. Even today I still have trouble with see, I just did it. But it's so it was absolutely a journey. It was not something I just sat down and started doing. I had to really focus on it and train it and listen to myself for hours and hours and hours to really find where I wanted to be. And now when I listen, I can hear what other people hear. I hear what you hear when I'm cast. Obviously, I don't get the same feelings, but I can hear what other people hear now.
When you like side note about the I hear myself do it when I'm doing casts, and I think I'm doing it subconsciously because I don't want the person I'm casting with to think it's a gap. So I'm sealing it up, and then I'll pause, and then I'll stop talking. I think
so
that's why I'm doing it.
So the first step is to learn how to pause instead of say but then you end up with that problem where the other person you're casting with might take that as a direction to cut in. So the second step is to learn to not stop talking, which is so hard to do. But that's when you'll start saying things that you don't necessarily agree with, or you don't necessarily think was the right thing to say, but in that moment the important thing was keeping everything running. You know what I mean? And that's one of the harder nuances to really get into. Even I struggle with it for all the time. Hell, I haven't casted in long enough now that I'll struggle with it again once I start here in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, it's you because that's the common thing is you just pause. You just pause and you sound more intelligent. But when you're casting, you can't just pause. So then you learn to just it goes back to that trust yourself thing. Like, I don't know what I'm about to say, but I know it's not going to be stupid. And if it is stupid, who cares? You know what I mean? It's one of those. It's kind of so if you went through and picked, like, if you really took the time, it would take a long time, but if you really took the time to go through like all my games casted, you could pick out a lot of stupid shit. Well, you absolutely could. You know what I mean? A lot of stupid comments, a lot of things like, why would you say that? It's like, I just needed to say something. I needed to keep the flow going. I needed to keep the clock running, and that's what I said in the moment. And that's just how the game is sometimes.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Right, I just got the warning for battery.
Oh,
so
okay.
I've got to ask, are you good for time? Because I know we're going quite long here. Have you got a hard
if we could do it within the next 30 minutes, if we could finish up in the next 30,
no worries.
that'd be great.
I'm just going to grab my battery because I'm
Okay.
I'm dropping here. I should have a big one. Yes, I need a big wire. Where's the big wire? Right. So yeah, 30 minutes. I'll keep an eye on the clock as we go. But one thing I didn't want to just like skip past. I really wanted to just have a little moment for it. You've said his name minimum about 20 times. I've genuinely lost count. Palador. So you co-caster, obviously involved heavily in VRML. Like, what's your relationship like with Palador? Was that like over a long time, or did you like click straight away?
Me and Paladar are very different people. We can be totally honest about that. He's kind of a reserved, very conscientious, very Palador. You've seen the way he writes things up. They're very thoughtful, very well considered. He's not a fly by the seat of your pants kind of guy. I am. I will. What's the issue? Let's wing it. Whatever. It is what it is. We got a show to put on. And I have over time learned how to plan better and stuff like that. But we're very different people. We have very different philosophies on things, even when it comes to casting, when it comes to production, when it comes to how we cast games, what games we cast, when we cast, scheduling, like the whole thing. We've always butted heads is not the right word. We've always had a very we've always discussed things. We've always, this is the philosophy we're running with. And he's also always been, he was the board member. He was the lead production guy, and he did eventually create. I say eventually, like he did create the production leads, because he couldn't be the only guy making decisions, and he often wasn't. Everything, he would get input from people and all that, and so our relationship was very much. There was a power dynamic involved, but there was also very much a mutual respect. Especially after we both did so many games after so long, and we both realized what each other was good at. Like one of the things, and this is one of those things. Like I know Palador knows how to make because you can make when you're in a position like that, you can make decisions that are better for you personally, but not good for anyone else. Right? He could totally reap the benefits of being the guy in charge. And he wasn't that kind of dude. He's not that kind of guy. And one of the places I can point to, he was consistent about this, was in general, because I can get so loud and so excited over things, he would let me finish games. Like when it was the two of us casting, if you listen a lot of the times when those final calls happen, in season 1 or 2, you'll kind of hear us like maybe shoulder push over it, after a few seasons. It was usually I tended to be the one making like the final moment call, and it was because there was that sort of like that I get so loud and so excited, and he recognized that, and he allowed, and so that's why like I always let him host. If you watch me and him, I say let, but like there was a power dynamic, and I don't want to make it sound like I could have just been like Powder, I'm gonna host. You know what I mean? It wasn't like that, but like I never had an issue with him hosting because he was a better host than I was. I could be exciting and loud and all that stuff, but when it came to introducing the game and introducing the players, I can give you a great intro, like read all your names off and make that sound exciting. But like when it comes to actually starting the show, he was always better at that, and he was always better at kicking us off, and he was always better at puns and certain transitions. You know what I mean? It's like we both realized we had these strengths that we each had particular strengths. And we both were able to, like, when we cast together, we can weave into those strengths, and we can trust each other to do those things. And so that was our relationship was always kind of like that. We were always, we've always been very opinionated, and we always share our opinions, and we always talk them through. And eventually we come to a decision, and we also have a relationship. If we don't agree with each other, whatever the decision is, that's the decision. If it comes to a vote and we disagree with that vote, that's the decision. And we're buddies. We don't go out to dinner or anything. We live very far apart from one another. But Powder is an awesome dude, and I am a better caster, production guy, all that stuff because of the example he set and the standards he set.
It's one of my favorite examples of chemistry, and I mean you've just said it now that to give the headline, he's calm and collected and you're loud and crazy, and it just goes together so well. And you've done so many casts together at this point as well that you just know each other inside and out, and like you just deliver.
And it was even at like NEPA because the power dynamic was different at NEPA because VRML Powder was a man, and NEPA they really pushed me up to be like the lead play-by-play guy. And that was kind of a disruption to the power dynamic we were used to.
Interesting.
And at first, it was a little awkward. But we both recognize we're there to do a job, and we're not in charge here. We maybe could have worked ourselves into positions like that, but we were not the ones making those decisions. Somebody else was. And so once we figured out how that worked, we were back on it. And then eventually we went back to our normal way of casting together, But if you listen to like Pro Series 1, anytime me and Capow cast together, it's a very different dynamic than what you hear normally. And it's because we were serving a different boss in that case.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought that would affect it in that way.
Yeah, well, because the way we cast VRML is very fluid. There's not a play-by-play caster and commentary guy or anything like that. There's the two casters. You're both casting. You're both doing commentary. You're both doing analysis. Whereas at NEPA, they very much, at least early on, when they had baseballer there, they were following that classic play-by-play color commentator format. And so you had to, I was the play-by-play guy, so whoever I was casting with was the color commentator. Sometimes we swap, but eventually I was the play-by-play guy. And so if you listen to those early casts with me and Palador at NEPA, he's not doing a lot of play-by-play because that's not what we were instructed to do. Not like it wasn't heavy-handed or anything. That was just the way things were.
So this is the first time we're speaking about NEPA in this interview. What at the time, at the height of NEPA, when you were casting there with Palador, you're spectating this game, and it's like the rules are different now. There's like a 5-minute gap in the middle. Like, what did it feel like then? Was there like an image in your mind of what this game was becoming?
NEPA was just a different way of doing things. I never really NEPA for me.
Okay,
so
cool.
from my perspective, I was I've always my association has always been with VRML, and I'm big in VRML. Not big, but like my big thing is VRML. And NEPA, they wanted to do things their way, and part of their way was hiring casters in a certain way, and I fit in with that, and I was keen on that sort of like, I'll do that, I'll cast for you. But it was just all it really was just NEPA wanted to try it their way, and I wasn't fighting against it. I want to see how that plays out, and I don't mind having a small role to play in it. I don't want to get too. I was clear I didn't want to get too involved because of my involvement in VRML. I didn't want to create that conflict. But I did want to. I love casting, and I'm good at casting, I think. And they wanted me casting, so that's something we could do. And so, NEPA they just wanted to try their own thing, and I was curious to see where it was going to head.
I was asking the question out of curiosity of like being so involved with NEPA at the height of it when all of that was happening. Like, was there a different energy about it behind the curtain? Were they like, okay, this is going to be big, we're going to be doing something very different? But it sounds like you kind of saw it as like a test.
Their perspective was, it was huge. It was going to be huge, and I know a little bit more about what they were up to than I can probably. They had interests that were tangential to sports, that would make sports a lot more profitable. And I don't want to go into too much more detail than that, but that was kind of, they had a much broader sort of angle that they were working, but from inside, but that was like, there's the organizational kind of perspective, but then there was like the broadcast room perspective, and the broadcast room was pure enthusiasts, all of them, Nails, Brutus, everybody in that broadcast room was a genuine enthusiast of the game. Even Timber was an enthusiast of the game. I understand how people feel, and I have no qualms on how people feel about anything that happened, but even Timber was a fan of the game. But in that broadcast room, where it was just broadcast people, it was always excitement. It was always positivity, at least from where I sat. Because I didn't get too far behind the curtain at the NEPA live event at Busch Stadium. I was much heavier behind the curtain, but that was more incidental to just my position there. But as far as like the online, when everything was still online, I didn't really see too far behind the curtain, but that was part of my arrangement with them. Was I don't want to get overly involved because I don't want to create that conflict. So from my perspective, it was all, we're doing a huge, this is going to be huge. Actually, I mean, that was how it was. They all believed in what they were doing. They wanted it to be as big as the NFL or the MLB or the NHL. Wow. Like, that's what they were aiming for. And I didn't necessarily, I could see what they were doing. I could see the angle they were working, and I was very curious to see if it would go the route they were hoping to take it. And they were working on some stuff when all this happened that may have turned into some cool things, but ultimately, what happened.
You coined the term VR sports as opposed to VR esports. It sounds like it's quite a strong philosophy of yours that this game Echo is way more than people sat down at a computer holding a mouse and a keyboard. This is people stood up, swinging their arms around, putting on a bit of a sweat, and you really wanted to push that distinction that it's not the same thing. Where are you now now that we know that this game that we've lived in and we've invested so much time and effort and resource into is ending? Where are you now with that vision? Do you still hold that and you think, oh yeah, it's inevitable, it's just going to look a little bit different? Or is it different? Yeah.
No, I still hold that. VR sports are the future. And that's it kind of loops back to something we were talking about way early on about I want to start a local VR sports youth league. And I also I kind of use interchangeably VR esports and VR sports, honestly, but I do in my mind distinguish between a VR esport is something that is more like a traditional esport, like a first-person shooter that you've created a VR version of, whereas a VR sport is something more akin to a sport that there is no 2D version of that is unique to VR. And that's what Echo Arena is. Echo Arena is unique to VR. You're not playing this game anywhere else. You can play NHL somewhere else on a flat screen. You can't play Echo Arena. I mean, in theory you could, but it would end up looking more like Blitzball from Final Fantasy, whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's not. You can't get that. You can't get this experience anywhere else. It wouldn't work. It's so a VR sport is a sport is a VR game, a competitive VR game that cannot be. It can be replicated, but you don't get the same enjoyment out of it if you were to play it on flat screen. Whereas like Onward, Pavlov, those games, I love those games. They're great games, but there's 30 of them in VR. There's 30 of them on flat screen. They're all esports. You know what I mean? So there's just esports and VR esports. But then a VR sport is a sport that is unique to VR, like Echo Arena or like Gorilla Tag. If they had a competitive league, that would be you would have a VR sport there. You could have a tag game on a keyboard and mouse. But who's playing tag on keyboard and mouse? You know what I mean? So yeah, I still believe in that philosophy. I still believe VR sports are the future because I mean you're talking the benefits of esports, which is you're not risking injury, you're not risking potentially your life, even though life-ending injuries are exceptionally rare, but are possible. But you are still getting the teamwork stuff that you get from esports and traditional sports. But you're also getting physical activity. You're getting when you get into a live environment, you have that camaraderie, which you can get in esports. But I think this being more akin to physical sports, there's just a more physical, visceral kind of thing to it that you just can't get in esports. So it's just combining all the benefits of traditional sports with all the unique benefits of esports that make esports safer and more desirable. But you still get the health benefits of moving and all that stuff. You just create. It's just better. It's better. And I'm not saying it's more fun subjectively. I'm not saying it's better subjectively. But when you look at like objective metrics, it's just better. I mean, that's really That's why I make that distinction and why I believe in it so much. It's just better. It's going to be the next thing, unless the technological singularity and AI and all that makes it trivial. But just take for that. I just think it's just better, and I think it's still going to be the next thing.
That sounds pretty positive. Where are you with like the news of the shutdown? It's been a few months now. We're coming towards the end. We're not quite at the end yet. It still kind of feels like it's down in the distance, but it is round the corner. How are you feeling towards it? How are you feeling about VRMLCon coming up very soon now, just over a month?
VRMLCon, very positive. VRMLCon, I'm very positive about. The other question, I'm considering how to phrase this without being too pessimistic or too negative.
It is what it is.
One thing, I will never not be better. I will never not be better. Like to my grave. I'm bitter about the decision they made. It's made it very hard. I've never been one. I don't deal with death very well. Nobody does. But like, I can't go to viewings. I'll go, but I can't go in. I can't do it. And the slow death of Echo is excruciating. Excruciating to me. And I'm not saying that's a unique experience. I'm not even saying anybody has to think that's even a valid experience. But to me, these few months have, with relation to Echo and VR, they've been terrible. And I know there's a lot of positivity in the fight for Echo and all that stuff, but this slow death is just excruciating, and it's hard. And it's every time I think about casting, I'm awash with emotions. Every time I think about, as we've been, I don't know if you've noticed all the announcement went out today, and this about like finals coming up and all that, and we have VRML coming up, and it's really hard to imagine doing these things for the final time. In VRML Con's case, the first time for the final time. Like it's hard. It's emotionally very taxing emotionally, and I've had some serious life changes in the same time span, unrelated to what's going on. And it's all just been, it's been very hard to focus on anything in this space. That's why you haven't seen me around. I've been doing stuff the whole time, but a lot of behind the scenes stuff. And no, it's terrible. It's excruciating, and I hate it. And I do believe they made the wrong decision, but not within the context of how they were keeping the game up. I think they're making the right decision would have been to like put resource into the game, update it, provide updates, make it a live service game again. But given they weren't doing that, they were putting it in maintenance mode. I understand why they made that decision. I just think I think they went the wrong direction. I think they're losing something serious. But with all that being said, that's in relation to Echo Arena. VR generally, but Echo Arena specifically, that's what that's in relation to. All that pessimism, the bitterness, the anger, very angry, very sad, depressed, sad. But I do believe in the projects that are coming out as a result of it. Now, I've put a lot of my personal, not hope. Hope's not the right word, because it's not hope. I don't have hope for whatever. That's not how I operate. But you look at like another Axiom. They're working on something. You've got David. You've got a handful of people from the community that we all know and trust, and you've got Lemming, the Palador's old teammate, the guy who made Gorilla Tag. He's the first Echo Arena world champion. He made a game that blew Carmack's mind out of the water. You know what I mean? Like, broke all the rules that they thought were set in place. Like, obviously, the dude knows what he's talking about. And Lemming back in the day was always talking about locomotion and Echo being why Echo was so immersive. And I 100% agreed with him. So when I look at another Axiom and who's involved in that project, I don't believe the game is over. Echo's done. Echo's gone. Echo's not coming back. Maybe in 10, 20 years they release something, you know what I mean? They're like, we're going to revive, whatever, who knows? But Echo's gone. Echo, in August, Echo's done. We're not going to see it again. Like, there's no more fighting for Echo. It's gone. But the replacement games, one of those is going to be good, at least. And whatever another Axiom is doing is gonna. I cannot imagine. So here's the thing. I cannot imagine them making something bad, but we know how the gaming industry is, But I don't imagine that they're going to put out something bad. I think that's going to be where most of us flock to eventually, is whatever they're going to be putting out. And I hope, I hope we get to see that sooner rather than later, because like I said, hope is not the right word, and I unless somebody's like going to offer me an actual job, I can't put in the same kind of time I had been over the last 3 years. But I intend to be involved in one way or another. Whether or not I'm allowed to be involved by however that all works out, we'll see. But I think there is hope for the future, just not for Echo.
So I've got a couple curveball questions, or literally a couple. I've got two. And the first one is, I like to ask people, because it's always like I can't predict what people are going to come out with. And it's really simple. It's just, what are you curious about? And ideally something completely unrelated to Echo, but of course it's whatever you're curious about. So it could be something in this world as well. It could be nothing to do with VR. What else are you like pondering over at the moment, or has caught your attention?
I mean, literally anything. Because
Sure, anything.
This relates to what we were talking about earlier, just about like existentialism. I am in a perpetual state of existential crisis. It's not even like, do I have a purpose? I don't believe I do have a purpose. I don't believe any of us
Sounds like
do.
a great band name.
Right. But that's the truth of it. And so I'm constantly, reading philosophy and I don't really delve into religious texts too much, but like Buddhism has some interesting takes and stuff like that. So very interested in purpose is not the right word. Purpose is not the right word, but like the nature of the universe and what electromagnetism. And you can't see me hitting my own hand. You see the fake hands hitting, but like, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, what is going on? What is going on? You know what I mean? Like what? I'm literally just like electrons and protons, and they can't pass through each other because of electromagnetism. And there's a strong what is going on here? This shit's weird. And like you look at life, like life is okay. This is going to be really pessimistic, and I apologize to any kid who's. I'm just going to make him depressed right now. But like the first noble truth of Buddhism is that life is suffering. And if you look around, and imagine the basis of life is that for one creature to survive, many creatures have to endure a traumatic and horrific, violent death. And that's just the nature of life. You know what I mean? Like, that is fucking twisted. Sorry. That is twisted. And so stuff like that is what keeps me up at night. Literally. Like, that and like the concept of like driving down the interstate and a tire coming over the median and hitting me and just being gone. You know what I mean? That keeps me up at night. So that's when you ask me, like, what am I generally curious about? That's it. What is this? What is this? What is this? Yeah.
Nice. That's a great answer. Have you read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
No, I have seen the movie. So here's the thing. I have a very hard time sitting through a whole book. I know how ridiculous it sounds to most people. And I know, especially with like how I talk, you're like, what do you mean you don't read? Like, I do read. It's hard for me to read a book, especially a fiction book. So even though I know there's a lot of great philosophy in it, it's hard for me to consume media in book form. Articles, discussions, things like that I'm great with, or like scanning info packets. I'm not great at reading info packets, but I can scan to get the gist, get ideas, understand what's being expressed. But yeah, I have a very hard time. So no, I haven't, but I would say regretfully so. I have seen the movie, but I know that doesn't count.
I mean, I haven't. I think I've seen the film. I definitely haven't read it. Like, who knows if I'll get around to reading it? But I was asking it because that's what Elon Musk says in his interviews. He says that he felt everything you're describing. He felt the same at a young age, and it was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that like gave him a bit of positivity.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's like Well, see, here's the problem. I'm a habitual arguer. So one of the things I actually used to find solace in is, you ever heard of it's a short story, so I can do short stories. The Egg by Andy Weir.
No.
Basically, the idea is that, so in The Egg, this individual dies. He goes to whatever the afterlife is, and there's a person there, and he goes, hey, welcome back, and he explains that it's one consciousness experiencing every single life that you could possibly exist, and he's going to go back as an 1830s cow milker or something, and the whole purpose of the universe is to be an egg for this consciousness. And once you've experienced every life possible within that universe, you grow from your egg. The egg, whatever the word is, you get birth from your egg. The egg cracks and you grow up, and you become whatever the next stage of this conscious, supernatural life is. And that used to give me comfort, and then I started thinking about it. And I go back to that, this, and this isn't an appeal to authority when I say Buddhist first noble truth in Buddhism is that life is suffering. But there is a truth to that. And when I went on about how, just for one life form, there's this violence and all that. And I look at the story of like the egg, and I'm like, that doesn't actually sound amazing. That sounds like eternal torment. That's if life is suffering and you're and you're a single soul that's going to live out every single life form, and you imagine all the suffering that there is in the world, and how horrible some people like the experiences of some people like are beyond imagination. How horrible some of them are. That doesn't sound like a positive thing. That to me sounds like literal hell, like hell incarnate, like actually, like the Christian version of hell without like literal fire, like imagining it as like an analogy for whatever hell could be. That's what that sounds like, eternal torment of a singular soul living out some lives aren't bad, but that's, like we're living in a very fortunate time period, you know what I mean? Where there is death and suffering, but not like, not as much as there used to be. There's more people, so like if you just, run at, it's just brute force numbers, maybe, but as far as like, the actual, so yeah. I don't remember the original question.
No, you've answered it. It was about curiosity.
Okay.
The question you went into existential dread. What a topic! And then we kept talking about it.
Yeah.
And then I was asking you about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh,
and,
that's right, and that's
other
where
philosophies.
Elon Musk got his comfort, and
Yeah.
I have trouble finding comfort in those stories because I start analyzing them too much, and I get to the point of like, well, life is actually hell. So yeah, maybe I can read it. Maybe I should read it. Maybe I'll find some comfort in what they have to say.
I'm not trying to sell the book. I don't know. I was just throwing it out there in case you had read it and you'd gone down that route. But yeah, I know. I'm aware that you do need to shoot off. So I'll ask one more question that I like to ask everyone else. I'm kind of scared about the answer now because it's the kind of answers you've been giving me. Chip or no chip? Chip or no chip?
Implanting a chip into my brain?
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
I would have to weigh. I lean towards chip, but I would really have to weigh the potential dangers involved in implanting a chip in the brain. But I want the moment I started messing with like ChatGPT, plug me in. Plug me in. I will be. Let's start the cult. The AI cult, dude. You ever heard of Roko's basilisk?
No. What's that?
We don't have to go into it right now. Write it down. Look it up.
Okay.
Write it down. Look it up. Roko's basilisk.
Roko's basilisk.
It has to do with AI, malevolent AI, and it's there's a reason they call it a basilisk.
How do you feel about this year and like the next decade with AI? AI is having an incredible moment right now, and it's going to be
Privacy is dead.
Privacy is dead.
Privacy is dead. That's the thing. We all need to just, put your internet history out there yourself because someone else is going to do it for you eventually. Everything you've bought is going to be out there. Privacy is dead. I think that's one of those future philosophies. We're going to look back and go, how did we not see this coming? Privacy is going to be a thing of the past. You're not going to be able to hide any of that stuff anymore. It's going to be ugly, I think, but I think that's true. The other thing is, if we're truly at the technological singularity, and we truly are going to get general AI, who knows how it's going to look? It is a very scary thought, but it's also really enticing. The different ways of looking at it, it's like, it could be the end of humanity. It could be the end of the world. It could be the end of humanity. Maybe the AI is like, we can't compete for resources. They're going to kill you off. Maybe it's a Terminator situation. You know what I mean? Or it's, let's say it is the Terminator situation. That's just the next form of human evolution. Are we distinct from the AI that we are creating? Are we really? Yes, they don't think like that. That's one of the cool things when I actually learned how ChatGPT works. That I was like, how is it not comprehending what it's saying? It's because it doesn't even know, the words don't mean anything to it. It's all numbers and patterns. That's literally what it is. It converts every string of text into a string of numbers and then goes, what's the most common numbers that come after that string of numbers in all the data I've seen? And then it takes that string of numbers and reconverts it back to text, and that's what it gives you. It has no idea what it's saying. And that was such a monstrous, perspective to suddenly click, to be like, this thing I am having a conversation with that is, from my perspective, an intelligible conversation that could beat the Turing test. Not beat it, but what is beating the Turing test anyways? This thing, it doesn't even, the words it's putting out don't even matter to it. It's just a matter, it's just the calls and responses. What numbers did I give it, and what numbers does it think come after those numbers? That's what it is. And that is absolutely mind-blowing to me, that this is just how this thing thinks totally different than we do. And when we talk about like artificial general intelligence, we cannot help but imagine our brains. But that's just how, the natural selection, whatever, created our brains. But now we're creating something that's purpose built for that. It's not going to think like we do, and it's going to be totally. There's no telling where this is all going. So I don't remember the original question anymore, but the AI stuff is just, it's very scary, and it may spell the end of humanity, but it doesn't spell the end of us, because we are not distinct from this AI. It is us. It's just evolution. And I know we have this thing about making a distinction between natural and artificial. There is no distinction between natural and artificial. When you look at a beehive, you don't look, oh, the honey is not natural because the bees made it. No, it is natural because the bees made it. That's what makes it natural. It was a natural process. Everything we do is natural. We are a natural process in the universe. So if we're creating AI is not artificial. It is intelligence. You know what I mean? So it doesn't mean anything. Everything, there's no purpose, and the universe is nihilistic.
Yes, I did there. That's beautiful. Amazing. Thank you for your time, Dimwi. I really appreciate that. That's probably the longest one we've done.
I did ramble a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate it, and this was a good time. Thanks, and I really look forward to it.